from any location, right? Anybody can do anything from any location just because the cyberspace does not have a border, right? So people that were referred to as nation state are people that are sponsored by a state. By a state, yeah, I mean a country now, a nation, right? People that are backed and sponsored by their nation to carry out attacks on other nations, right? So on their own end or to their nation, they are doing something that is legitimate, something that is ethical, right? But to the other nation they are carrying out their attack on, they are doing something that is malicious, right? So those type of people, we refer to them as nation state attackers, right? Or nation state threat actors. And now there's a characteristics of how their attacks happen. We call it, the attacks are always advanced. That's to say, they are well skilled, they are experienced people, and their attacks are always persistent in the sense that whether you try to put in several mechanisms to prevent this attack, please confirm you can hear me. Princess, you're here. Dr. Wale, you're here. Can somebody confirm you can hear me clearly?
Very well. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. You're welcome. So like I was saying, the nation state is what most countries are using to cause harm to other countries, right? And today we hear of terms like cyber warfare. Now, terms like cyber warfare emanates from the fact that some countries can decide to sponsor hackers or attackers to attack another countries. I think some of the countries we know that are doing things like this are the countries like the US. If you remember, some of us that maybe we read some news then in 2010, you notice how the US attacked Iran, right, using a botnet, a technique we refer to as stock nets, right? So you can read that. I think it was in the news then. So now that is a nation state. What they did was to have gathered at people that have the skills to do this. And then through a flash drive, they got into the nuclear weapon of Iran and destroyed it, right? So now that is stocknet attack. So that's kind of an attack now is a nation state. For instance, the US existing without carrying out an attack becomes a threat, right? Iran existing without carrying out an attack becomes a threat. But the moment the US decides to, carry out this attack, on Iran, at that point in time, they become a threat actor, right? So, and now that type of attack is nation state because it is sponsored by a nation, right? So there are several countries that does this type of attacks. They have given us example with that. You can see North Korea is one of them, right? Countries like North Korea, China, Russia, all of those malicious countries, they sponsor or they do what we call nation state attacks on other nations, right? So what they do is they get several hackers and several malicious persons, put them in a place, and then give them all the necessary support they need for them to attack another nation in the cyberspace. And this is achievable because the cyberspace does not have a border, right? And so as somebody coming to put or to bring in the idea of peace and to resolve conflict, you should know that, okay, this type of attack, what are the things they are deploying? How are they going about doing this attack or carrying out this attack? And what are the things I need to do? So the knowledge of how nation state attackers, carry out their activities is always very important. And that is why we are looking at threat actors today. As a matter of fact, even Ukraine nowadays, carry out, I think the first war between Russia and Ukraine, we had cyber war, right? This one trying to attack the other person. If you remember, some time past, even the former president of Ukraine, his mic was attacked. I think the mic he was using was what they attacked to make him, to be an imbecile then, right? So that is a cyber war, right? Was sponsored by Russia. You understand? So when we look at nation state attack, it is something that when it attack or affects a nation, it crumbles a lot of things in that nation. So a country can decide to carry out an attack on another country. For now, there are no laws, guiding all of this. There are no documents guiding all of this. The only time that the world have sat to do something, that will regulate these things was in 2015, right? The Budapest Convention, right? I think then after that, the UN has also been trying to, create several committees to also look at some of these things. But the only convention that I've really looked at it, right, is the Budapest Convention in 2015, right? So you can also look at that document, just browse the Budapest Convention and read through their resolution, right? Then for Africa, we have the what is this other convention that was held in Ethiopia, right? So we have the is it Malabo? Yeah, Malabo Convention, right? So we had the Malabo Convention for African Union, right? I think that was later in 2017 or thereabout. So you can always look at this, just look at their resolution, how they try to see how we can manage the cyberspace, how nations can come together so that they don't attack themselves and all of that, right? So nation state attacks, when a nation carries out a cyber attack on another nation, right? Then we also look at the threat actors in the categories of hacktivists. So hacktivists are people that they decide to hack or carry out an attack based because they have an ideology that they want to push out, right? They have an ideology that they want to push out to people. So they can carry out an attack to promote that ideology. We can see that in several religious climes, right? Where people do misinformation and disinformation, right? Somebody is saying something, maybe something that is supposed to be this way, but you see people try to turn it or turn that information, against a particular set of person or based on their ideology. So that type of attacks, right, or people that carry out that type of attacks, we call them hacktivists, right? Some of them can be political, some can be religious, right? So the moment there's an ideology that is behind that attack, we refer to it as hacktivism, right? And we refer to the people carrying out that type of attack as activists. So this can be seen like the story in the US that happened in the US during with Trump, I think before his re-election, where some persons, were carrying placards, some persons were in support of Trump and some persons in support of, what is his name, Biden. And then I think with time, we noticed that, okay, some persons were arrested, the Capitol, when they attacked the Capitol and all of that in the US, right? So that kind of a scenario now, people will want to hack a particular website, want to hack maybe the government site, all of those things just to promote an ideology, right? Those type of people will refer to them as hacktivists, right? So in Nigeria, we see this a lot happening during our elections, right? Where you see people try to want to tarnish another person's image or try to bring out, information that are not supposed to be, or an information that is not supposed to speak well about a person, right? Putting it out just to disinform people, those type of people promoting their political ideology or promoting any form of ideology, whether religious, political, financial, or whatever form of ideology, right? We refer to those kind of persons as activists. Now, this is a category because both terrorists, right, carry out activism, right? So when we are looking at these threat actors, we have some, subdomains under them, right? Political activism is there, religious activism is there, maybe they are promoting a particular person or something is there, terrorism is there, right? Cyber terrorism, right, is also there. All of these things are hacktivism, right? This is what we refer to as hacktivism. Whenever an attack is carried out to promote a particular ideology, right? Then we have the organized crime. We in the cyber security or cyberspace research domain, we believe that this is the highest form of crime in the world, the organized criminals, right? Because for me to let me say this off air today, most researchers believe that even our banking sectors, even our banks, are some of the most coordinated, organized criminals, right? So we look at organized crime. At times, you don't even find them malicious per se. You don't find them as something that, you know, it's it's actually causing damage, but actually there's a crime in it. So when we say organized criminal or organized crime are crimes committed or attacks committed by established institutions, right? Established institutions. So they are well organized, right? Something like what happened with Hush Puppy, for instance, in the, I think, 2019 or 2020, thereabout. We noticed that, okay, what he did, even though it was a particular type of crime, which we refer to as, is actually categorized under social engineering techniques, right? Where he did back, that's business email compromise, right? All of those things are techniques and technology he brought in to achieve what he was doing. But if you look at the whole scenario, you know that this was an organized crime, right? He's an organized criminal. When he gets to this level, he knows the establishment, the established institutes to use at that level. When he goes to another level, he knows the established institute to use at that level. Otherwise, how will somebody be able to, dupe the US government of such amount of money, close to $100 million, right? The US government that have everything in place, for instance. So if the crime was not well orchestrated and organized, for instance, he might not be able to have achieved his goal. So he followed due process, following established institute to carry out the crime, right? And that is why we refer to it as organized crime. If I bring it back to the banking sectors in the war, right? The banks in the war. Even we here in Nigeria, we have seen occasions whereby there are some things that are some monies that are deducted from your account that there's no explanation for that, right? And we cannot go to the bank and start complaining that they have removed 2 naira or 3 naira from our account, right? And there's nobody that is telling them, okay, why did you remove this money from the person's account? So all of these things are organized, but you can see that, okay, it's a bank, it's established, the institution is a legitimate institution established under law, but it is established to actually carry out, or it's established and is carrying out its activities smoothly, but also has the criminal element in it, right? So any of those type of people that can come up with that kind of attacks, we refer to them as organized criminals. Now, organized criminals have sophisticated ones and the unsophisticated or non-sophisticated ones. So, like the ones we don't suspect, they don't cause much harm to us. They are not doing us any harm, so they are not sophisticated. For instance, like I made mention of our banks, if the bank takes two naira from 20 million Nigerians, right? That is almost 40 million naira, right? Now, it doesn't really cause any harm to a Nigerian or to anybody, right? But when the organized crime is done to subvert or undermine the proper working of a particular system, now you will see sophistication coming in, right? So if you are faced with this type of a problem as a peace and conflict resolution expert, what do you do? That is why we are learning to know that, okay, these things actually exist, so that while you start thinking as somebody that wants to always bring peace and also resolve conflict, you understand all of these things that are involved, right? Also, based on research, we have also discovered that most times when countries fight war, like research has shown that, okay, countries like Ukraine and all of those things, they tap into other countries, even Russia, North Korea, they tap into other countries' financial institutions, into other countries' banks, right? Sometimes you just see that, okay, there's a data breach in a particular bank. At times you see that there's no service. When you go to a bank and they are telling you there is no service, what do you think is the problem? They are under attack, but no banker or nobody, even the banker themselves, don't even know that no service they are telling you is actually saying that their IT infrastructure is under attack. There's no bank that will tell you that, okay, they have established an IT infrastructure and they do not have a backup plan, or whenever there is a fault, they do not have a plan. So when you go there, you hear out of service and all of those things, it is actually telling you that these people are under a particular type of attack, right? So some of those attacks comes from organized criminal gangs, right? Today, there are countries that have a lot of organized criminal gangs that, carry out these attacks, and the attack is mostly targeted to our banks, just as our banks also target us, not sophisticatedly, right? That is how they are also being targeted with sophisticated weapon. I think a friend was even saying that most of the war that is being fought between Russia and Ukraine is being funded by African banks, right? It's being funded by African banks, but our banks don't know. At times, they'll just hold the bank ransom, at ransom to pay a particular amount of money. No bank will come out and tell you that they have paid ransom to this gang, because the moment they do that, reputational damage will affect them. So they will not come out to tell us that, right? So sometimes those people will just deploy a malware, right? A ransomware, and then hold the bank at ransom, just like kidnapping, right? So somebody kidnaps you and tells, okay, pay this amount of ransom. At times, people just pay silently without other people knowing, because it will damage their reputation, right? So our banks will go ahead and pay, African banks generally, because most times the infrastructures we use here always have backdoors. So they always have their ways into them, right? So that is organized crime. Then we have another category known as insiders. Now, insiders threats are the most sophisticated form of threat actors. Why? Because there's a pidgin English parlance that says, "Who no man, na him dey kill am," right? So if you look at that phrase or that idiom, for instance, if you look at it, you know that the person that knows you the most is more dangerous to you, or poses more threats to you than people that are far away from you, right? Who no man, nine the killer. Now, insider threat is one form of threat, or insider threat actors are one form of threat actors that we have, a lot of research has been done, and yet people cannot really, manage the sophistication of this type of threat actors, because the insider threat, even as we are, as human beings, tomorrow we don't even know what our spouses will wake up and decide to do. No matter how trustworthy they appear to be today, no matter how genuine, no matter how loving they appear to be today, tomorrow they can wake up and decide something else that you can never ever think of, right? And you cannot even predict that these things can happen, right? And that is why we look at insider threat actors as the most sophisticated, because if you decide to use, for instance, today in the cyberspace, there's a technique we normally use for insider threat actors. We call it the zero trust technique. Please confirm that you can still hear me. Please, somebody should confirm that you can still hear me, please. Princess, are you there? Dr. Wale, are you there? Please, somebody should confirm
Yes,
you can see me. Okay, okay, okay.
yes, I
Thank
can
you,
hear
thank
you.
you, thank you. Okay, so I see there's actually a technique we always use for insider threats, and we refer to it as zero trust policy or a zero trust technique, whereby you trust nobody. I think even when those days, even up to now, we have this balance also, trust no one, right? So a zero trust is when you trust nobody, including yourself. You do not even trust yourself. So you will not say that you trust yourself. So that is the only technique that people are trying to use today to guide against insider threats, right? So insider threat actors are very, very sophisticated. Now, in insider threat actors, we have what we call intentional and unintentional insider threat actors, right? Now, remember, I've told us threat actors are attackers. So even if I say intentional and unintentional attackers, right? Insider threats or insider attackers, right? Understand that they are all interwoven. And when I use the word attack, I believe we know that there's action in the threat there. When I use the word threat, you know that there's no action in the word attack, right? So all of these terminologies, let us always know them so that when we are using them, you understand what we are saying, right? So we have the intentional guys and the unintentional guys, right? So if, for instance, I'm working with you today or we are together or working together, you can decide to unintentionally cause harm to me, right? It is not intentional. And that is why even if you go to the court of law, the law always look at the action, right? Which causes the attack now, and then the intention, right? And that is why those of you that are lawyers, you say actus reus and mens rea, right? The action and the reason, that's the intention behind the action, right? So we have the unintentional. These harms happen unintentionally. I was not supposed to delete a file, but unintentionally, I deleted that file, right? So insider attacks can come unintentionally, but it is actually an attack because the loss of that item is lost forever. I might not have the intention to drive my car and hit somebody and the person dies. I might just be doing a reverse, right? And hit somebody and the person now dies, right? That is unintentional. But when I intentionally do it, it's a different ball game entirely. And that is why even in murder, you have degrees, right? Manslaughter, first degree, second degree, third degree, we have all of that. So insider threats, we consider the intention, whether we consider the action, whether it is intentional or unintentional, before you pass out a judgment, before you determine a judgment, right? But in all, whether intentional or unintentional, we capitalize on the zero trust technique, zero trust policy, or zero trust model, right? To help us, guide against insider threat. So if you are working in a place or even living in a house, or even as you are in your house, you should not trust anybody as far as the cyberspace is involved. And remember, the cyberspace, like we told us, is another world that we have moved into as human beings. So we are existing in that world. So to guide against insiders, people that are around you, right, who knows you, right, is for you to apply the zero trust model, right? So you trust nobody. You do not trust anybody in as much as it has to do with the cyberspace. You don't give your phone to your spouses. Now, this is, how do I put it now? This is the concept now, right? The concept is that you don't give the phone to your spouses. You don't share things you use in the cyberspace. Now, people might want to argue that, right? So even though we give our devices and share, but when it has to do with a device that has data or something that is precious to you, and it has to do with the cyberspace, then you must trust nobody with it, right? So that is what we use to, manage that. Now, another category is the shadow IT. Shadow IT. Now, the shadow IT are people that you buy. Okay, let me just use example for you buy a router from MTN. So there's nothing you do with that router that MTN does not know. So your shadow in that router is still with MTN, right? So now, if becomes malicious, MTN becomes malicious and decides to want to carry out an attack on you, I hope you know that that attack will be successful without any form of hitches, right? So what they have done on you, or what we say that kind of attack is the shadow information technology. They have shadowed you, right? Because your shadow is exposed and open to them. So we have people that will come with genuine services to you, but their intention is actually to cause harm, right? So what those type of threat actors will refer to them as shadow IT actors, right? They come with okay, you are to buy, want to sell this thing, okay, it's very good, this one, preach all the preaching for you, you buy it, but their intention is maybe to collect data or to track your location or whatever, right? So we refer to that as shadow IT. So most of the applications we have on our phones today are doing what we refer to as shadow IT, because most of us buy a phone. Some of those applications, we do not install them. They are just there. So what are they doing, right? Aside the fact that they are all botnets and putting us in a particular network for them to be able to manage us or do whatever they want to do with our devices, they are also doing shadow IT on us, right? So these are some of the categories of threat actors. Now, remember, I used the word categories. That is because in each of these items that are listed here, there are other subdomains, right, under them, right? There are other subdomains under them. Like I mentioned for insider threat, I told us, okay, we have the intentional insider and the unintentional, right? So you're working in an organization and you mistakenly uninstall an app, or you mistakenly click on something that destroys the system, unintentional. So that is a form of attack that people decide to scan. People will decide, or people can study them and then see how they bring in countermeasures to protect systems that these persons are handling. Some people, if you want to handle that kind of a situation, they can do what we call sandboxing, whereby the platform where those kind of persons will be operating on is different from the actual platform that can actually jeopardize the functioning of the organization's network or whatever it is that the organization is putting out there, right? So there are still areas to all of these categories of threat actors that we have written here. I've mentioned that of hacktivists. I told us that cyber terrorists are under them, right? People with political ideologies are under them, right? People with religious ideologies are under them. So there are also different categories under that. I've talked about organized criminal gangs, whereby we have people that are sophisticated criminal gangs, non-sophisticated criminal gangs, they are all under this. And now, also let us understand that all of these threat actors are being categorized based on their motive and expertise, based on their motives and expertise, right? When we say based on their motive is what is making you wanting to do this thing, right? Not intention now. Motive is what is making you to want to do this thing, right? So while we say based on their motive and expertise, so their expertise can also determine where they belong to, right? So for instance, if I don't have the necessary knowledge to maybe hack or attack another country, a state government, a nation cannot come and sponsor me or decide to sponsor me because I don't have that expertise, right? So if you look at all of these things that we have mentioned, if you look at people like the nation states, the activists, and the organized criminals, you can see that these three categories, based on expertise, it is high. Their expertise is always very high. They know what they are doing, and they can decide to do and undo. They are passionate about what they are doing. I'm talking of the nation state, the activists, and then the organized crimes, right? The organized criminals. So these guys are intentional about what they do. And when we say advanced persistent, their attack is most times advanced, and it keeps coming, right? So even if you want to try to prevent it from happening, they will still come up with another pattern of, carrying out that attack. So it is always hard to protect your system or your network or the cyberspace against this type of criminal. Because if you talk of the money to use in acquiring tools, they have it, right? You talk of the expertise, they have it, and their motive, their motive is very clear: to pass this message or to achieve this, to steal this amount of money, to undermine this particular asset. So their motive is always clear, right? So, but when you look at the group unskilled attackers, right, also known as script kiddies. So script kiddies means people that play around with scripts, and they just test things to see, download this one and try to use it, all of those things. We refer to them as script kiddies, right? So script kiddies, insider threat, and shadow IT have the expertise is not quite that much, because they have their motives are not really, might not really be to carry out the attack, but the attack is actually happening. So those applications sitting on your phone, they are just there, but the person that built the application can actually carry out an attack using that application on your phone, but he has not carried out any attack, and that application is still there, right? So even though he's doing shadow IT, the motive might not really be to, carry out this attack. Insider trade also have the aspect of unintentional, right? And then unskilled hackers just playing around with scripts. So these people, we can say their expertise might be very low, and might not really, their motives are not really well defined. Please, I don't know if there's any question before we proceed. Any questions so far? Dr. Wale and Dr. Princess, any questions so far? Princess, Dr. Victoria, rather. Are you still there? Are we still together?
Yes, please.
Okay, so all that I've explained, I believe they are clear enough, right? Okay, so for these actors to be able to carry out their activities, they deploy several forms of threats, several forms of, exploits, right? For these things to be able to, for them to be able to carry out these attacks, right?
Hello, doctor. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you
I have
clearly.
been with you all through, and I understand everything. It's just that I am still in the mechanic workshop. I'm just rounding
wow.
up now to start going home.
Oh,
But
wow.
even with that, I put the phone on the other, because this other phone is
Yes,
having just about 10%, which will soon
okay,
go up. But the other small one, I cannot speak with that one, but I can hear from you very well.
okay, okay,
So everything you have been saying is loud and clear, and I understand everything very well. So even when you were asking whether there's anybody still in the house before even Princess Victoria responded, I was trying to respond for the other phone that I am here, I'm listening, but it
okay,
was not connecting. So I just quickly risk it again now when you are asking if we have any question to use this other second phone to quickly let you know that I am here, I'm listening, And I don't really have any question so far. So we can proceed.
Okay, doctor. Thank you very much.
It's okay.
Yes. Okay. So we want to now look at the actual exploits. So I'll explain the word exploits to be the techniques, the actual techniques that or tactics that these cyber these threat actors normally uses, right? Or normally use the actual techniques. Now, let us understand that for these threat actors to successfully carry out any attack, right? They must have or they must have carved out what we refer to as tactics, techniques, and procedures, right? For instance, even myself and yourself, if we are here now and want to carry out an attack on each other, definitely nobody just jumps and go and except it is an unintentional attack, right? And even if it is an unintentional attack, it means there's actually, for the attack to be, so there's actually a procedure to follow to carry out or to attack somebody that I have followed unintentionally to carry out that attack, right? So every threat actor, especially the intentional ones, have what we call a tactics, right? A technique, and then a procedure, right? So tactics can be what should I deploy and at what time. Techniques can be what item should I use in carrying out or in deploying, and that item is what we refer to as payload. That item that the threat actor is actually using to carry out or to implement that attack, right? We refer to it as a payload, right? Then the action itself is what we refer to as exploit. Now, take that again with examples. Now, when we look at techniques now, we are looking at the actual item that the attacker knows how to use best and is actually using it to carry out the attack. For instance, I can say tactics, I want to use a machete on somebody. Let me just use that now. For instance, I want to harm somebody. I want to harm somebody. Let me know if I want to use them. I want to harm somebody. So I have a gun, I have a machete, and I have maybe a stone, for instance. Now, all of these things, the gun, the machete, and the stone, are what we refer to as techniques in this climb now, in this context now. Those are the things we refer to as techniques, right? Otherwise known as payload, right? Payload. Now, when we say it's a payload, we are looking at the weights of that particular or of those techniques on the targets that we want to attack, right? The weight of those things. For instance, if I use a gun on somebody, he dies maybe in 2 minutes. If I use a machete, maybe he bleeds for 1 hour and dies. Then if I use a stone, maybe he goes to the hospital and he does not die, right? But all of these have different payloads, right? So when I use the word payload, I believe everyone should understand what payloads are. So payloads are the effect or the impact of a particular technique on the targets, right? So the impact of a particular technique on the target, right, is what we can refer to as payload. Then the actual action itself, the actual act of me carrying out, picking the gun and firing, or picking the machete and raising it and hitting on the person, or picking the stone and throwing the stone on the person, that actual action is what we refer to as the exploit. Now, inside the attack circle, there's the payload, there's the exploit. Inside an attack circle, right? Now, not threat circle. Now, inside the attack, the action, the form of attacking, there's the payload, there's the what? I said the payload, and what's the other word? The payload and the exploit, right? That's the action itself. The action is itself. How did I pick the tool, or what pattern, or whatever? So all of these things are techniques. Now, my tactics can be my decision in using any of these things based on my expertise, right? Then my procedures are the step. I pick the machete, I take 2 steps, and then I hit on the person. I pick the gun, I take cover, and then aim and fire. That's procedure now. So what I'm saying is, in every form of somebody carrying out, or any form of threat actors wanting to carry out their threat action, they always have a tactics, a technique, and then a procedure, right? So the tactics, technique, and procedure that Peter will use in getting to Maitama, right, might be different from the tactics, techniques, and procedure that Dr. Wale will use to get to Maitama. Just know that, right? So even though our target is to get to Maitama, we can all use different tactics, techniques, and procedure, right? So these techniques now, like I made mention of somebody using gun, somebody using machete, somebody using stone, and all of those things, are what we are going to be looking at now, right? So one of such is what we refer to as malware, right? Malware is a malicious software. That's the short form of malicious software. So any software that is designed to cause harm or undermine the proper working of a system is what we refer to as a malware, right? Any software that is designed to undermine or subvert, right, the proper working of a system is referred to as a malware. So malware is a short form for malicious software, right? Now, there are several types of malware that a threat actor can decide to use. Now, remember, we are looking at just techniques now. A threat actor can decide to use any form of malware to actually deploy in order for him to carry out this action, right? And even though we are going to look at that in details as we progress, but let me just explain them so that we understand what you're saying. Now, when we say malware, malicious software, examples can be things like ransomware. If you remember, I have explained to us about ransomware. What are ransomware? Ransomware are those malicious softwares that when they are deployed, they take hold, they kidnap the system or the targets they have been they were deployed to, right? They seize the proper function of that target and then demand for a ransom to be paid before they now release that resources, right? So just like, remember, we have already told us that almost everything that happens in our physical world also happen in the cyber world, otherwise the cyberspace. So when I'm saying some of these things, you also try to liken them to our physical space, to what happens in our physical space. So ransomware is, the techniques around ransomware is the same as what happens in kidnapping. So somebody kidnaps somebody and then demands for a ransom before releasing that person. So in the cyberspace, somebody can kidnap your assets or kidnap a particular resource, demand for a ransom, right? And then before releasing that resource or assets, right? Now, most times, why that of the cyberspace is more dangerous is that most times when they are releasing, most times they don't even release these things, even after ransom is being paid, right? Because the pattern in which they have gone through to take hold or kidnap these resources must have actually subverted the proper working of that resources. Just like somebody is coming to kidnap somebody and then they are already firing everywhere and they now fire and then maybe fire on the person's leg before kidnapping the person. Even if they pay ransom and they want to release that person will never be or come back normal or come back the way he was or she was. You understand? So when we look at ransomware, even when ransom is being paid and they even eventually release the resources, it will never work properly just as it is or just as it used to be. So Ransomware, we advise that whenever you are being held ransom, you don't pay. You actually look for an alternative, and that is why we advise okay, all of these things are some of the techniques we put to prevent things like ransomware. Another type of malware is what we refer to as virus. So our viruses are types of malware. So viruses, trojans, and worms, right? They are all types of malware. Those days we used to hear of virus, even though there were worms and trojans. We call all of them virus, right? So when they affect our system, we say, my system isn't affected by virus. But we have different types of this malware type that we refer to as viruses, right? Some of them can be worms. Some of them can be Trojan horses. Now, what are their differences? Viruses, Trojan horses, and then worms. What are their differences? So a virus, just like we know in the physical body, when a virus enters your body, it cannot be killed, it cannot be eliminated, it cannot be purged. That is how when a virus affects a system or attacks a system, it cannot be purged. Even if you install an antivirus, the antivirus can only suppress the virus and put it somewhere, right? But it can never remove the virus from that system until, except that system is formatted completely and everything deleted from it, right? And then viruses spread based on contact. So if I give you my flash drive and you insert into your system, there's every tendency that if you copy the file that has been affected by a virus in your system, it will also move with that flash drive to another system. This is typical because it's something we see on a daily basis. You say, I hope your flash don't have virus, right? So virus propagates itself easily, right? And it is always being triggered. It propagates itself by a trigger, right? So it is either you are copying, you have inserted a flash, you click on something, or you on something, or you open a file, or so it is always, there's always a trigger to make virus, come to work. That's why at times there are some files that if it is corrupted with a virus and you try to open it, you just see maybe your screen starts misbehaving or something. It is because you have taken an action. So virus does not just work on its own. There must be a trigger, something to trigger it to actually, spread and cause havoc on your system, right? So that is typical of viruses, right? So when we say something typical of worms, worm don't need any trigger. Worms, just like the word worm, our worms, normal worms, they move from one place to another, even without anything, right? So worms does not propagate by a trigger. So they move naturally to any location. And as such, a worm that is deployed over the internet space can crawl into your system without you, clicking on anything or doing anything, right? So worm propagates itself naturally. It moves from one location to another. So the mere fact that I am sitting on the same network and you are connected to the same network and there's a worm on your system, it can still go through the network and then affect my own system, right? So that is how worm behaves. So when we tell you, don't click on some sites, don't go to a particular website, don't open this site and all of that thing, it is because some of those sites are proven to have worms. So the moment you visit them, they crawl directly into your devices. There are some links that will tell you don't click on links and all of those things, right? Some of, like most times, most of these pornographic websites, right? They have worms in them. So what they do is, the moment you visit any of them, the worm crawls in. right? Some of those websites that, promise like sporting, betting website, some of those type of websites, have worms in them. Some website that will tell you download a particular tool for free, right? You want to download something, okay, you look for the crack version and you download all of those things. Those people, what they are trying to do is they are trying to propagate worms, right? Then we have Trojan horses. So it's another type of things we refer to as viruses, but all of them are actually categories of or types of malware, right? So Trojan horses comes in the form of, they appear to be things that are good for us, right? Appear to be things that are enticing, but underneath them, there are malicious items inside of them, right? So you see a very beautiful picture and you now download it and use it as your screensaver, right? So what you are not thinking of, what is the intention of the person that puts out this picture out there? Do you think that somebody will just buy their data, design a beautiful picture, and then just put it there for you to go and download? So something should strike your head for you to know that, okay, this thing might have a malicious content embedded inside of it, right? So that is how Trojan horses come. So it was gotten from the word, the Trojan War, right? The Trojan War between the Trojans and the Greeks then. Those days, those of us that have seen the movie Troy, I think Troy was acted, is it in year 2000 or thereabout? The movie Troy, right? So I think from the storyline or based on history now, what happened between the Greeks and the Trojans, how they were able to conquer the city of Troy, right? So even though the city of Troy was like the strongest city, today nobody is even hearing of the word Troy, right? But we are hearing of the word Greeks today. So how were they able to conquer the Trojans? After much fighting without them having any headway, they now decided to use a technique. And what they did, they built a giant horse, right? A giant wooden carved horse, and then presented it to the Trojans, right? Telling them that, okay, they are sorry, submitting to victory, that, okay, they have surrendered to victory, so that you accept that gift from them as to show that they have really forgiven them, right? So the Trojans now accepted the gift and all of that and forgave them and all of that, not knowing that inside of that gift, the Greeks have selected, strong soldiers, strong of their men, and they have put them in some location inside of that wooden carved horse. And when the Trojans, celebrating their victory, took this horse into their city, in the night when everybody was asleep, some of these soldiers came and then opened the wall of the Trojans, right? And then the Greeks now were able to penetrate into that wall and then took over the city of Troy. Now, that is a storyline, even though I did not say it well, but I know some of you know this storyline better than myself, right? So this is history now. So the word Trojan horses was coined from that war, Trojan, right? Now, the horse is a gift. So somebody can come with something enticing, give to you. You'll be happy that you have this, that somebody has given you something for free and all of that. But inside of it, that is where the enemy that will kill you, that is where it is hidden, right? So a Trojan horse is this type of malware that, comes in non-malicious states, right? But actually has malicious intentions, right? So you can see that on our daily basis. On daily basis, you visit Facebook, you see a lot of pictures, you see a lot of things, you go online, you see a lot of things, you download a lot of things, free of charge, like those of us in this part of the world that enjoys free of charge things, right? Want to download music, you're looking for the free one. Want to download movies, you're looking for the free. So most of these things are places that malicious or threat actors always hide, their what is it called? Their exploit, right? Always hide what they want to use in attacking you, right? So remember, we are looking at techniques that threat actors uses, right? So malware, we have discussed ransomware technique, we have discussed viruses, we have discussed worms, we have discussed Trojan horses, right? So there are still more to it. There are spywares also. Spyware is another type of malware that these threat actors can deploy to spy on you. So like I was telling us, all those applications we have on our phones, what are they for, if not to spy on us, right? Some of these malware, or they can use a combination of maybe a virus and a spyware. So they send a virus into your system, and the virus is actually spying on you, right? Spy on you and reports back to the threat actor what your activities are. That is why if you look at your phone now, there are some applications that, you know, they are making use of your location, they are making use of your photo, the permissions in those applications. You even wonder, why will this application be demanding for this permission, right? Most times when we do physical classes, we do some practical tests whereby we look at some of these applications, we go to the file, to the app permissions, and then undo some of the permissions that are on, because somebody can just know all about your location with some of those applications that you don't even know why they are in your phones, right? So those things can be used as spywares, right? So we also have adwares, right? Sometimes you log into Facebook, you see different types of advertisement coming. At times you just hold your phone. The moment you connect to a Wi-Fi, you see different types of adverts that's coming in, popping up on your phone. And sometimes you cannot even undo these things, right? So these are adware. So some hackers or threat actors can actually use these adwares to cause harm to us, right? So there are a lot when we look at malware. There are really a lot. There are things we call rootkits. Rootkits try to, you know, attack the bottom parts, right, of your systems, the kernel of your system, because a rootkit is designed to go to the roots, to give the root level privilege, right? The kernel, I believe I explained kernel to us in our first class, that is the smallest unit, that's the life of your operating system, right? So some attackers can design, or some threat actors can develop their own malicious software or their own malware to target that kernel, so that they have privilege level to the root level. They become like the owner of that operating system. They become like the Microsoft that gave you the system, that gave you the operating system that you're using. You know, so if Microsoft as a company has given us operating systems, and imagine that one person is able to deploy rootkit to 200 operating systems, definitely it becomes the owner of those 200 operating systems, which means he will be the one doing the patching, doing all the updates and sending whatever. So you already are inside his bot network, right? So I've been saying botnet, although that one we can look at it under social and denial of service also. But even botnets, right, is also a form of a malicious technology, right? So we also have, I've mentioned rootkits, okay, backdoors, right, whereby an app is built for you, and then there's a backdoor for the app developer to always come into that app, right? So that is also a malware. So there are lots when we're talking of malware, and like you can see, based on the ones I've discussed, these are, you know, techniques that these threat actors can deploy. Another type of technique is what we refer to as denial of service and distributed denial of service attacks, right? So threat actors can decide to do or carry out their malicious activities to, you know, prevent you from having access to a particular service, right? They will deny you from having access to a particular service. Just give me a while. Let me take a sip of water. Okay, so welcome back. So denial of service and distributed denial of service attack. I told us that denial of service is when a threat actor deploys a technique to deny you of a particular thing or to deny its target of a particular resources, right? So this attack can be orchestrated towards an organization. That's a big network, right? Just like we said earlier about our banks, right? So this type of attacks, you know that it can come from maybe organized crime group, a nation state attacker, or a hacktivist, where they try to deny for activists that they try to deny a particular service to a particular group of people because they don't want, or they are pushing out an ideology, or they are promoting an idea, right? So this kind of attack comes from this sophisticated form of threat actors, nation states. Like I think there was an attack recently on, is it East London or West London? I think I saw that news, right? Whereby it crippled almost 70% of the activities in that area, right? Both the bus terminals doesn't work, the electricity was down, or whatnot. So many of the things, most of the things are, IT based. It cripples it, right? Deny people of services. So people were actually trekking to their workplaces and all of that. It happened also to South Africa. Is it in 2017? Yes, in 2017, there was an attack on South African banks that shut down all the banks in South Africa. So imagine the kind of life that will be lost. Particular service. So for the fact that they try to deny you of a particular service, they bring down the infrastructure that should enable you to have that service, right? So when we say it is distributed or a distributed denial of service now, it's like an advanced form of a denial of service attack, in the sense that we are having this attack from different points. So if this attack is coming from just one point, one location, it is denial of service attack. An attack is happening to deny you of service. But imagine when several persons, multiple persons are trying to attack you, to deny you of different types of services, right? We refer to that as distributed denial of service. It's coming from distributed sources, right? I think in our election, one of the technical glitches in the last election that they were talking about was denial of service attack. So let me bring that back home. Let's not go too far, right? So one of the glitches they are claiming, or they said that happened technically, was a denial of service attack. And I think then, was it Pantami also came up with, there was a publication that over 2 million system attacked the INEC portal on the day of election, right? Denying, the services of uploading results and all of that, right? So that is a denial of service attack. So for him saying over 2 million, systems trying to attack, you know that it is coming from 2 million location. Now that is distributed. But if it was, let's say, one person attacking the IRF portal, for instance, now that is a denial of service. But coming from multiple persons, we say it is distributed denial of service. So that is another technique that threat actors uses or deploys, in carrying out their attacks, right? Denial of service, to deny you a particular service, right? Okay, so let's move on to, now, let me even explain this. I was talking of bot network. Bot network. How does bot network relate with denial of service attacks? Now, what is bot network, first of all? What is a bot, first of all? So a bot is like a zombie, a robot, right? A bot is like a zombie, something that you have control over. You tell it to go, it goes. You tell it to come, it comes. That is a bot, right? Something that you have control over is a bot. Then a network, we have told that a network is when two or more devices come together to communicate and share resources. So I'll say a bot network, we are talking about a network that you have control over, right? So that bot network is what we refer to as botnets, right? A network, that's two or more, several computers has already come together to form a network. Now you have control over that network is what we refer to as a botnet. So a botnet always belongs to somebody, which is a threat actor, right? So a threat actor has a botnet. So if a threat actor has a botnet, it means he has control over that botnet. And then that botnet, what the threat actor is using to control all of that botnet is what we refer to as a command and control center. A command and control center. That is what is used to, control that botnet. So every botnet that is out there reports to its command and control center. Now, if we talk about our phones that we are using, because I always use this as an example, because we are always in people's botnet. We are always in several actors' botnet. Remember, threat actors, right? They might not actually carry out attacks, but they are threats, right? So we are always in the botnet. For instance, I might have Uber. Let's use a popular app, Uber. Uber app can be on my phone. Let's say Dr. Wale has Uber app. Dr. Victoria have Uber app. Now, Uber is automatically everybody is a threat to everybody. So Uber automatically is a threat actor, right? Uber automatically is a threat actor, is an organized business, an established institution. Remember that I told us that when we look at organized criminals, some are sophisticated, some are not. So those ones they don't pose any harm, they don't pose any danger to us. But for the fact that three of us are using Uber, do you know that Uber having their app on our phone can actually sit wherever they are sitting and then cause harm to our phones, the three of us, just because we are using Uber and the app belongs to them. They have a command and control, a dashboard they are using to control or look at all the devices that has Uber, right, installed on them. So what we are trying to see now is we all belong to a network that is controlled by Uber for the fact that we have Uber installed on our phones. Now, Uber, we are using it, they have a service they are rendering. So let's say, okay, let's assume they are legitimate. And let's also assume that we have an application in all of our phones that we don't even know what they are there for. We bought these phones and we saw these applications there. So it means the owner of the application automatically is a threat actor. So it means any other person decides to want to carry out an attack on all of us, that person can carry out that attack. That is because we are a botnet to that person. We belong to a botnet to that person. So now that person can decide to use all of our phones to carry out a denial of service attack on one particular phone. So the person that is being attacked will be seeing attacks coming from all of us. And that is where the relationship between botnet and denial of service attack comes in, because a distributed denial of service attack is made possible when a particular threat actor has control over multiple systems, and he can use those multiple systems to carry out a denial of service attack. So that is a distributed denial of service attack, right? So we look at data breaches and espionage. That one is very common in Nigeria. Every day you hear organizations like NIMSI, INEC. Which one is the recent one? Okay, the recent one is CPN. CPN said that the data they published, which day was, people are using it for social engineering, right? So data breaches, when threat actors decide to target the data of individuals. personal identifiable information of individuals, and also sensitive information of individuals, right? So that is what we refer to as data breach, right? And then espionage. They try to sieve out this information after bridging the information. They sieve it into their own, or make it, or create their own personal database of that information, right? So that is data breach. And that is, it is a very, how do I put it? Let me say, a very problematic kind of technique, because that is where everybody, or almost all threat actors, are looking into now. They want to get hold of your data. They want to get hold of your personal identifiable information. Even the ones that are malicious and the ones that are not malicious, all the threat actors today wants your data, right? Uber wants your data so that it will know whether you will be traveling or you like using Uber or not, whether they will do more advertisement to you or not. Both wants your data. Everybody, MTN wants your data. That is why you cannot even do anything without registering. The fact that you are registering all of these things is not because they want to regulate it. Regulation is just a tip of the iceberg. They are getting this information because they want your data. And like we see, data is the oil of the cyberspace. Why do they want this data? For marketing people. Some of them want it for marketing people. Some of them for advertisement. Some of them make huge money selling this data in the dark web. Now, the dark web, that is where most open source intelligent tools get their information from. If, for instance, there's an open source intelligence tool, right? Let's say we are looking at Maltego, for instance. For you to subscribe a year in Maltego is about $40,000. Now, what does Maltego do? Maltego, if I install Maltego on my phone and I drop doctor's phone number now, Maltego will interconnect all the people that doctor has called for me, the discussion they had, all of those things, right? If he has chatted with people, I can see the people he chatted with, the connection, and all of those things. Now, how does Maltego get that information? They go and buy this information from data holders, right? From the dark web. NTN will not tell you that they are selling data because they are organized. And that is why we know in the cyberspace, we look at some of these things and we call them organized criminal gangs. I'm not saying that NTN is a criminal, right? This is for educational purposes. I'm just giving us instances to understand, the context of how these things happen, right? So sometimes these people that all need your data, you don't even know who is actually selling your data in the dark web, right? You don't know if it is somebody that has come through your location and has told you that, okay, before you install this application, your location must be on. And you do that, install the app, and your location is on, and he knows all your movement, whatever, goes to the dark web and then sell it to all these open source intelligent platforms. And they get this information. Some of them do automatic synchronization of this information. And that is why, the data of individuals are very, very important and key. So most people will believe that it's just for advertisement, but no, they use it for open source intelligence. And like I explained intelligence earlier, intelligence is a sophisticated form of information. So it is an information that has been confirmed and validated. It's a validated information. So when somebody say, I have an information about somebody, it might just be an information, the person might reach that place and that other person. But when you say, I have intelligence on this, it means at that point in time, the person is moving, you have moved 4 steps from this place. The intelligence tells you that, okay, this person has moved 4 steps from this place because it is a validated information. So when we say open source intelligent tools, we are looking at intelligence that are open there. You create Facebook today, you put your username, you put your password, you register your MTN, you put this one, you put that one, you're registering your bank, you are putting this and that. All of these things are correlated and then form intelligence that are being presented. So when this intelligent information are being breached, what happens? Enters the wrong hands. what happens? They still go and sell it, right? For a confirmation and revalidation to show that truly this is your information, right? So, and that is why if you notice in Nigeria, the Nigerian government has also tried to see how they can help reduce all of these things. And that is why we have what we call the Nigerian Data Protection Act today, the Nigerian Data Protection Act of 2023, right? It was signed into law in June 12th, 2023 by our president. Initially, we had it as a regulation that was drafted out of the European Union General Data Protection Regulation. So in every country in the world, they have this data protection kind of law that protects the data of their citizens, right? So in Nigeria also we have the Nigerian Data Protection Act, and that act stipulates that whenever there's any data breach, you must report to the commission. There's a commission, Nigerian Data Protection Commission, right? That is headed by one Dr. Vincent Olatunji, right? So he's the head of that, the commissioner of that commission, right? So the commission states that whenever there's any data breach, it is supposed to be reported to the commission within 72 hours. So there's a law in Nigeria that helps you, fight against data breaches and data theft, right? So some threat actors are just interested. This is their area of expertise. Then some are social engineers and phishing. So for social engineering and phishing, we will actually leave that and handle it in a full-fledged class because social engineering and phishing is quite broad. I believe almost everybody in this class today has been a victim of social engineering and phishing. And hopefully by the time we explain, these concepts, definitely everybody will understand what we are saying because there's nobody that will tell me that you have not belonged to a group before that they'll send a message that, okay, so and so people are employing this, so click on this link to get this, or click on that to get this, right? So all of these things are techniques and technology under social engineering. So it spans from the physical aspect of social engineering to the technical aspect of social engineering. So I will drop the recording I actually promised earlier to drop. That is what it will cover. So why I actually didn't drop my recording as promised is because I tried playing that recording. I noticed that this voice sound was too low. And then we might not really hear what I'm saying. So I don't know, maybe the app I used, since it wasn't the Google Meet platform, I actually used the PowerPoint platform, this one that we have here. You can see there's a recording, whatever here. So this is what I actually used in doing the recording, because if you use the other one, it is data intensive. You are recording with data, you still upload with data. So I was thinking I would be able to use this and do that, but I think the recording video is too faint. The voice is too faint. So I will do a new record and then upload for us. Hopefully in our in the next week, we might not be waiting until weekends before we drop recordings. So I will just do the recordings for our 2 classes that we have missed and then drop them for us to listen to them. There's one that will be done as a follow-up to threat landscapes and then attack landscape. Then I will also do that of the social engineering and phishing and then drop for us also. So please, I want to apologize for that. Hopefully, as this week progresses, we'll do all of that. And then, like I also told us last week, there are some issues that around me that I'm also trying to, sort out. That is making me, I think, Dr. Wale is aware that my wife put to bed last week. So there are a lot of things that are still that's making me not to be settled for now. So hopefully by this week we are entering, I'll do all of it. I'll send and upload all those recordings. It will pay us to listen to them. And then we also see how we can have our classes as the week progresses. So before we will call it a day, we'll look at insider threats. So I think I've thrown a little more light on insider threat earlier. as one of the most. And also, you do not know the intention of the person that will the attack, right? So it's quite hard to want to demystify how to handle the insider threats. And that is why, like I said earlier, we encourage a zero trust model, whereby you trust nothing around you in the cyberspace, including yourself. You do not trust yourself in the cyberspace, right? And that is where a lot of personal cyber hygiene comes to play, whereby you put out rules and regulations for yourself on the do's and don'ts that you have to do on the cyberspace, and also live in accordance with those do's and don'ts of the cyberspace. This is the only way that you will be helped on preventing or achieving zero trust that will help prevent insider threat. So you do not trust anybody. Another technique we always use to protect or to guide against insider threat is a technique we like multi-factor authentication, whereby you implement a multiple factor authentication, whereby somebody does not just have a direct access to something, must pass through a particular process to another process before they achieve or gain access to that particular thing or item or resources, right? So that is multi-factor authentication. So we also have another thing we call access control, whereby you grant access to people based on a particular discretion, right? Based on particular rules, based on particular mandates that they have. For instance, if I have my spouse, I can decide to grant access to my spouse to make use of my laptop if only you want to do this particular type of thing. Or I create a different user page for you. In a much we must share this system, then I have to create another user. That thing is access control. I'm trying to control access to my resources, right? So we create access based on mandate, based on rules, right? Based on discretion, right? So you can implement that for insider threats also. Then your normal entry policies, like maybe password. Before you might be able to use my phone, you should know my password, and why will I give you my password, and all of those things, so you should know the reason for all of these things. So these are some of the things that we put in place to guide against insider threats. So we want to draw the curtain here for today, and then open the floor for questions. In case there are any questions that you want to ask, you go ahead and ask them. And if there's anything that you are confused about as it concerns all that we have discussed today about threat actors and cyber threats, then let us hear them. Remember, we have told us several categories of threat actors. Threat actors are those people that can actually carry out an action, a threat action, that can actually carry out an attack. You can refer to them as attackers. But we are using the word threat actors because at this point, they have not decided to carry out the attack, but they have the potentials of carrying out attacks, right? And then we listed different types, the ones that are sponsored by nations, the ones that are doing theirs based on a particular ideology, the people that are doing theirs because they are just playing around with things, the people that are organized, right? They are legitimate establishments, that are committing crimes. Two things to use, and they are still monitoring you, they still have access to those things, right? Then we also talked about some of the techniques they are using. Remember, we told us that every threat actor have their tactics, technique, and procedure. So an organized criminal, the tactics of an organized criminal will definitely be different from that of a nation-state sponsored attacker. A tactics from an organized criminal will be different from that of a hacktivist, right? An organized criminal can decide to go through all the legal whatever to have their organization registered, but a hacktivist will just go ahead and carry out their activity. So their tactics are always different. Their techniques can be the same. They can decide to deploy a particular type of technique. For instance, someone might decide to use, they might both decide to use ransomware, but definitely the ransomware I'm crafting is different from the ransomware Dr. Wale will craft, because our motives are different. The other one is to steal money. The other one is maybe to pass an ideology. So if I go and craft a ransomware to steal money, it doesn't make any sense when I'm supposed to pass an ideology. So techniques too might be different, even though we have the same categories of techniques, right? And then procedures of how to deploy these things are always different. So that is why we say, okay, every threat actor have different tactics, techniques, and procedures, right? Then we'll move further to look at, these techniques that they normally use, and we look at malware, we talk about ransomware, virus, worms, trojans, spyware, and other wares under malware. Talk about denial of service and distributed denial of service attacks. We talked about data breach. And we also talked about insider threats. So for social engineering, we'll be doing a recorded video and be sending for that. So these are the things that we have discussed for today, right? So if there are questions, please, let's take them. Dr. Victoria, are you there? Is there any question from your end?
No.
Okay, so the class is understood, right? Dr. Victoria, is the class well understood?
I'm getting it.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Dr. Wale is coming in, so let's hear from him if he has any question. Dr. Wale, any question from your end? Dr. Wale, is there any question from your end?
Hello, doctor. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now clearly.
Yes. I have no question whatsoever. It's very, very clear, very concise, and well presented. I just like I said before, I'm just about driving out from the mechanic workshop. But then
Oh, sorry about that.
everything so far, I have followed everything. I just put my phone just by my ear. That's how I've been listening with the other phone. So
Oh, wow.
it's very okay, and it's I discovered that part of it is even what we talked about under threat landscape.
Yes, yes.
Yes, just the fact that you added some other things to this one, which is also very good. And we'll be looking forward to the video or the recorded video. The two
Okay.
videos you talked about. So, but for me, I am very good. It's okay.
Okay. No problem. So let's call it a night here. Hope
Okay.
to see us in the subsequent classes. Thank you
It's
and
all
have a
right.
wonderful night rest.
It's all right. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night.